Hi there, I'm Robert from Robert's Cakes and Cooking and Bake Boss Australia. I am about to get going with my witch demo for caking all over the world. So I've got my little witch demo here, and there goes a pumpkin, made by Pumpkin in my intro. So that's a nice quick one. I just want to say thanks to Paul and David for having me on again, and thanks to the Cake Decorating Company for being the main sponsor. And especially thanks to Bake Boss, because I work for them and they're sponsoring the first hour as well, just with some giveaways. I'm just going to flip the camera around, just be a second, and we'll get started. So, and here we go. And jump down in there so I can see what's happening. And I'll give you a bit of light as well. So that's all good. A little bit nervous, but we'll get right into it. So I'll be as quick as I possibly can. Well, in terms of getting into it, because I've got a lot to get through to get one of these little creatures done. So what I'm going to show you is how to use molds to do this little character really fast. So the molds, you can use any molds. You can use the silicone molds. I like using the hard plastic ones. I've used both and they all work quite well. I'll launch right in with my modelling chocolate. So I'm working with homemade modelling chocolate, and if you've got questions, I can kind of see them on my screen, and we'll get there. Hopefully, hopefully you'll get over the seasickness with me moving the camera around. So what I'll start with is the face mold. Doesn't really matter which face mold you use. I use a number of them. But just find one that you like. There's lots of different options out there. Oh, I've got colouring on my hands now. So there's lots of different options out there. The way to use one of these silicone face molds is just to dust it, tap out the excess, get a ball about the size of the head that you want, roll it in the bowl, and let me know if you can't hear as well, people. So I'll get that in there, get that going. And push that through. So what I'm doing here is I'm folding the back in over itself so that it punches out all the detail into the front of the face. Because otherwise you can be left with little marks where you can't quite see enough detail. And then just because I don't want to have to build up the back of the head later, I'm leaving a little bit on the back of the head there. And here we go, get that going. Clean off that rubbish from the side of my hand there. So that is basically that for getting that going. I've got cold hands because I'm a little bit nervous, and that's not unusual. I tend to calm down after a little while. So modelling chocolate is my most favourite thing to work with because you can do things incredibly quickly with it. Now, normally I'd be working with slightly warmer modelling chocolate, and I always work with a really firm modelling chocolate so that it sets up nice and fast and nice and firm. And I'm just working this to keep it warm so that I can get it to do what I want it to. Now I've got a torso and a body mould. So what I'll do with that is work out, I don't want to do what I did in my one of my pre-prepared examples. I ended up putting the boobs and the bottom on the same side. It doesn't really look great, so let's try and avoid that because that's always just a bit funny. It's usually because I'll finish setting up one part and then just have a bit of a panic because I'm trying to work too fast and get stuff done a bit wrong. So you dust your molds really well, tap out the excess, and you do need to dust the molds. And then this stuff is great. This is armature wire. You can also do this just with a like a satay skewer, and you just line that up from the bottom through to just above the neck, and that's quite a nice way of doing it. Generally, people aren't going to be eating these, but that's a nice food safe way of doing it. And you can get away with just putting the support in one side. So I'll just straighten out my armature wire. So this is extremely soft aluminium wire. It's sort of kind of food safe, but not really. So if you were to do this for a show cake, you would want to use a posy pick, or even if you're doing this for a client cake, you'd want to use a posy pick in the top of the cake just to protect the cake from the wires. So I've got that there, worked out where my neck's going to be. Just going to pinch that off at the top, nice and firm, and then try and make sure that I've got this here. So the idea behind this is that I'm making a posable, structured figurine, and that's where that's going to sit. I'd probably go a little bit longer on the leggies, but I'm just trying to race it for you. And these are getting cold. It's a really beautiful clear day here today in Perth, but it's also really cold for some reason. So we're just getting into spring. Now I'm warming this up, trying to keep it as warm as I can so that I can actually work with it. Then I don't want to use the head on this mold because I kind of think the head's ugly. And one of the major ideas behind working with the molds is to make them your own. You don't want your figurines to look like everyone else's. And the point of this one is to do a really, really fast figurine, but you still don't want it to look like everybody else's figurines. You want it to have a bit of your own flavor. So this is the method that I use if I'm doing a lot of figurines on a cake. So I've recently done a basketball cake where I had to do 4 of a kid's favorite basketballers playing on the same court as the kid. And that was a really fun little task. So I just did it with these molds because it was a much faster way of doing it. And I could get all the little peoples on it. So get that in there, get that down. And here we go. So just line that up on top, make sure that it's nice and warm, and do the same on the other side. So, and if anyone's got questions, ask me. I really like talking about chocolate and I'm quite happy to nerd out. I can sort of kind of see the comments, so I'll do what I can and just get that in there. Now what I'm doing is getting these to be just filling the holes up, and fill up the feet. And a lot of this is just manhandling chocolate into molds, but it's fine, works well. So you can use commercial product for this. I tend to use my own just because I'm super cheap, but if I'm running classes or something, I like the reliability of products like the Saracino sculpting paste, or there's a product that we get from New Zealand which is called Chocolate. Now I'm just going to sandwich that on so you can see where that is there. Sandwich that on and get that there. Now if I was going to use this, I'd probably want the top of that to come a little bit higher up into the neck area. It's all right. Now am I going to end up doing that again? Okay, heels back, toes, boobs, all good. Always funny. Hey, we can't all be perfect. So now I'd normally pop these into the freezer for a little bit, and that's enough to set them up. And then once they're set quite firm, you just crack them out of the molds and they go really quite nicely. So same on this side. Just so that I don't end up with any creases on the surface, I'm just pushing that in there, and done. And take the excess off, and put that together. So here we go, and then put that one on top, and take the excess off. Then stand up and put your body pressure on it really, really hard. That all comes out nicely. And here's some arms I prepared earlier. These have just been in the freezer. So if you crack that, they just pop right out. And this is all in kind of extreme close-up. And yeah, they just slide right on out. And then you can get to using them. So normally what I'd do is pop that in the freezer for probably about 15 minutes. And then when it comes out, they come out like that. Now for the arms, again, it depends on what mold you're using. I'm just using the cheapest generic molder I've got. I picked it up a couple of years ago. Yeah, I don't even know where I got it, but it's really the mold is not the important thing. The important thing is just find something that saves you a bit of time. So you get that shape in there, get that shape in there, and try and get close to it. Don't go too crazy. And then again, press down really hard and cart that off to the freezer. So that's off to the freezer. I'll see if I can come up a bit higher so I can see a bit better now. And then once I've got all of those bits done, you end up with something like this. So this is my figurine, and you just run down the sides and you trim it. So you can see how it's got those seams. Just trim out the seams and trim out the seams. And it's surprising how few tools I end up using for a lot of my models. If I was doing show work, or if I was doing work that is really important to me, then I'd get out the really exciting tools, and I'd spend a lot of time making sure that I've not used molds, I've used everything all myself. So I'm just going to blend where that doesn't quite match up nicely, just push the chocolate into place. So just get that all going there, smooth out the seams in the legs, and you can really drag the chocolate around. So once you've got it out of the mold while it's still really quite firm, you leave it there for 10 minutes or so, just to come back down to room temperature, or back up to room temperature rather, and clean up your mold, and you can drag the chocolate around all over the place. One thing that you can't do is be too prissy with it. You've got to really get into it. So if you've got a bit of a lump on the back, you can just get in there and drag it all the way around. You can drag that all the way around to the front, do whatever you need to. And I can't believe I put my hands in colouring. Now this is my own modelling chocolate recipe. It's 4.5 parts white chocolate, white compound chocolate, to 1 part corn syrup. And yeah, you just melt your chocolate and add your corn syrup in. Now this is how the little faces come out, so just pop that out there. So normally that would have been in the freezer for a bit, but you can see it just sets up while it's sitting there, it's fine. Then you can change the shape of it as well by how hard you push into the different molds. So I'm just going to give that a bit of a support there, so that holds on. And I've got this to the point where I can get out a really decent figure in about 40 minutes. So, and then of course it's just a case of making them look more natural. So if you can get your figurine to be interacting with something, or if you can get your figurine to be posed more interestingly rather than just looking like it's come straight from the mold, you'll end up with a much nicer looking product. So yeah, back to the modelling chocolate. I prefer just to use the raw, uncoloured modelling chocolate if I'm buying it, or if I'm making it. Melt my white compound chocolate, mix in the corn syrup, and then drop it in the freezer. Take it out of the freezer, warm it up and knead it through until I've got no lumps. And you can see I'm just cleaning up the little fingers here. Clean up its little arms, and you can even get to the point where you can get some really nice finger separation. So now if I just warm that up, I can repose the elbow. So warm, warm, warm. I'll try and do it on both of them. Come on, warm up nicely. And to colour the chocolate, I just use gel colours. So you can use powder colour, you can use gel colour, you can use oil colour. Gel colours are really good. They don't affect the chocolate negatively in any way. In fact, sometimes they improve the texture of the chocolate. One thing most people don't realise is modelling chocolate actually improves with a little bit of water needed through it. So if you've made a modelling chocolate and you find that it's a little bit crumbly, or it's not quite working well for you, the way that you can make it better is just by dipping a fingertip in some water and then kneading that through, and it just helps to emulsify the fats and the sugars together, and you just get a much smoother, softer gentler product. So while I'm doing this, I'm just rubbing the seams out, giving that arm and elbow, making it more interesting. If we had more time, I'd stop and separate the fingers out and make them look a little bit more delicate, but the point of this is speed. So I can do the same on this. So if you warm this up, and this is going to take a little bit of time to warm up nicely. Oh, have I cracked its nose? No, its nose is fine. Haha. So if you warm this up, you can then bend it and yeah, there'll be little cracks form, but you can just seal them over. So you just move it around, seal it over. Surprisingly, a lot of people say that their hands are too warm for modelling chocolate. But surprisingly, having warm hands actually really helps, because it means that you can melt the surface of the chocolate and drag it around and smooth it more easily. This is also really nice to do with vinyl gloves on, because the vinyl gloves help you with smoothing off the surface as well. And I quite like, if someone's going to be eating this, I quite like working with gloves, just because I find it a little bit more hygienic, although if you've got clean hands, it doesn't really matter, but yeah, I'm a bit funny about stuff like that. I like to be a little bit over the top with cleaning things. And just looking for my block. So now I've got a bit of a bend in the leg. You can give it a proper kneecap. You can really shape these out and go extra detailed if you want. So I've got a little bit of shape to the body. You can twist the top of the torso to sit nice against the way the legs are posed, that sort of thing. But really it's just to create a framework that the dress can sit on. And I've got my little face here. Now the face work, I'm going to come in really close for, and hopefully this will focus. But this is really where it comes into its own doing this. I'll come back a little bit, I think, and tap that, yep. So with the face, this is how you can make it look more like your own work. I usually don't use a face mold that's this detailed, but yeah, this is just the way this one worked out. So this is also my very most favorite tool. This is the satay skewer. So the bum end of this is a really good modeling tool, and the pointy end is great for carving little lines on things. So I'm just going to start with this upside down, because I find it easier if I get I find it easier to make them match if I do it upside down. So I'm just going to get that in there. And I'll start by drawing a line with the sharp end and throw it around. And do the same on this side. See if I can get that to match, because I don't want to go too far off. This is where being a little bit nervous makes me shakier than I should be. So this also works better if you go from the corners of the eyes to the inside. So corners of the eyes to the inside, and corners of the eyes to the inside. And this is one of those things that I get a bit funny about with, here we go, with figurines. I always feel like I've failed a little bit if I've had to make it a sleeping figure, because all my figures can't be sleeping. So I really like to spend most of the time I've got on putting eyes into a figurine and making sure that it looks as nice as possible and as realised as possible. So what I'm doing here is I'm just drawing the little moon shapes for the eyes, and then I'm digging them out with the point of the skewer. And this is easier on a much bigger head, but yeah, I usually use like a child face mold to do more cartoony faces, but I wanted to do something a bit different from what I've done before. These sort of things. So I'm just very gently hollowing out the eyes and working from the corners to the inside, just so that I maintain that eye shape as much as possible. Just from the corners to the inside, corners to the inside. Yep. And use the bum end of the skewer just to tamp it down in there so that you've got a nice flat bed on the inside of the eye. And hopefully you can see I've created that hollow in there. If you've got one of these that's not got a nose, you would, of course, put the nose in. You can further refine that by picking out the nostrils with the point of the skewer. And hopefully you can see that, yeah. So you want to go in and up. So in and up. Oh, and I've just broken her septum. Oh dear, here we go. There we go, she's all better now. So it just helps to give it a little bit more realism. And if you warm that up a little bit first, you don't tend to break the nose as much. You can also refine the lips a little bit further as well, just by going from the outside in. With a face this small, you hit the uncanny valley really quickly. If you get too much detail on it, it actually looks a bit freaky. So less is more, and you want to go for a little bit of subtlety where you can. One of the things that I usually tell people here is don't pick the figure up as much as possible, mount it on something, and move the mounted part around, because while you're holding it, it's going to melt. But if you pick it up just for a little while, it's not going to do too much damage. Now I've just got a little bit of white and just warm that up. And then I use my scalpel and my sharp stick just to cut little tiny bits, and you fill up the eye area. Whoop. Or you splot it on top and hope for the best. So then press that in and fill up the space. That's going to need a little tiny bit more. You're always better off adding less than you need, because if you add too much, it's hard to take it out. If you add, oh yeah, that needs half that. Yeah, if you add little tiny chips, it's a lot easier. So get rid of that. Then poke that into the corners. I'm just going to take my time with this as much as possible for the eyes, because dressing a figurine and slapping arms on it really doesn't take that long. The bit that takes the most time with this is getting the eyes and the face right. And that's really what will sell a figure. If you've got nice eyes and nice face, then you've got more chance of having a figure that looks a little bit more thought out and realised. So even if everything else has gone wrong, if you've got a figure that's got a nice face, yeah, it just kind of helps to sell it better. And if you've got a figure that's interacting with something, that helps more as well, or has an interesting pose. So funnily enough, I actually really like making faces from scratch, but I don't have time to do so very often, and I'm usually just doing these cakes for friends and family, so it's not worth the investment and time. So what I've done there is I've filled those out, used the bum end of the skewer, and I'm just tapping that in there. So the whites of the eyes are lower than the eyelids. So they're lower than the eyelids, but they still have a slight curve shape to them. So I'll pop that back down there because I'm starting to melt her face a bit. And it's like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones going on. Now I'll just use a ball tool, and this is where I get a little bit more detail in. So just take my time just to create an upper eyelid, and move her around and try and do the same on this side, just to create that upper eyelid carefully. And again, this is one of those things where less is more. You do too much and it won't look great. And yeah, just get that upper eyelid going. That's all fine. Now this is always the slightly terrifying bit. I'm just going to thin out the bottom of her chin as well so that that sits a bit nicer. Because these moulds straight out tend to have quite a thick chin. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but just for the figurine that we're going for, it doesn't quite work. So now I'm going straight down with the bum end of the skewer to create a iris. And if you flour that, it doesn't pull the white part out. So done, straight down. And let's see, how's that look? I'm messing with the focus, but it should be fine. And then you can just tamp that around a bit so that you get a bigger iris. And hopefully you get them looking in the right direction, not looking too terrified. And you can just plump the eyelids up again. Done. Then I'm going to use a tiny little bit of brown just to fill up the eyes. You can use whatever colour you want. I just have brown, it's the same as the hair colour. It usually looks nice if you match the hair colour to the eyes. Also, saves time. To get this light complexion skin tone colour, I've just used straight up orange. Just orange Chef Master, might have even been neon bright orange, I don't know. It was either that or sunset orange. Doesn't really matter, you just use a tiny little bit of orange and it's enough to give you a fairly natural looking skin tone for a light complexion. You don't want to go too fast because then you end up with them looking like they've got an horrific tan or like horrific self-tanner. If you want darker skin colour, you then have to start toning it with a little bit of brown, or if you want a just a more healthy tone, just start toning it with a little bit of brown, and almost any brown will do it. So you can see what I'm doing here is adding tiny, tiny little chips of colour, and I'm just going to keep building that up. Whoop. And if you flour the stick, and do it that way, it means that the chocolate sticks to itself and not to the stick. A lot of use of the word stick there. But hopefully that's near enough. Yep, so that does look like it's near enough. Yep, and you can see that. I'll do something nifty later on that'll lock all of that in place. I'm just going to have one final tap around with the, hopefully that's not obscuring that too much. Yep. Now the less you do to this, the better at this stage. So that's her little face there, all done. I'm going to zoom out again. And we'll get more detail onto that once we've got the body assembled. So let's come up a little bit. And oh gosh, you can see the horror of my kitchen and my bench. Yeah. This is what happens when Robert does lives, when he's also in the middle of making wedding cakes. And I don't know what I did with her foam block that she was standing on, so just take some of those out and jam that in there. There. And it's going to come further this way so that I can give it a good angle, because this part all tends to happen pretty quick from here. So we're still going, all good, yep. And we need to be up higher. Yep, and good. And we've kind of got droop and mess in the background, but you guys are tough. You'll excuse my horror. So now I've got my arms, they don't go on yet. Just about went a bit ab-fab. Got arms, anyway. It's a family one. So I'm warming up the top of that little knobby bit there. And I've picked up some red from those roses. Just going to stab this into the back of the head. Oh, where are we? Yeah, stab this into the back of the head. One thing to remember is that a person's neck comes about there. It's not under the chin. It's not right at the back of the head. It's about most of the way to the back of the head, and there's a bit of clearance between the chin and the neck. So just make sure that you've got that clearance going on and squiggle that around in there and jam her head on. Try and get it on in an interesting way. And just smooth that chocolate down onto the body, and that will lock the head in place. Oh, that will lock the head in place. That's all good. There we go. Lock that on. And that looks half decent, fairly reasonable. Let's give her some ears. And ears, my ears go on stupidly simple for these models. It's also how I do my more advanced ones as well, but you just need two tiny, tiny little balls, or we'll start with one tiny, tiny ball. Here we go. And chop that in half. Then grab that on the tip of a finger, line it up. Here we go. Whoop. Let's just bring that in there and hopefully that will refocus. Yep. So line this up with between the eye and the mouth, about where you want it, and then swoop it forward. So what I've done is just press that onto the side of the head. So it just creates a suggestion of an ear. And here we go again on this side, just between the nose and the mouth, round about where an ear would be. And then you just swoop it towards the front and smooth it down. Oh, and just got a bit of a rough ear there, but that's okay. The ears are actually important. They do make a face look a lot better. So here we go. And got hair here, which is going to be getting a little bit too cold. Come on, warm that up. Warm that up. And actually what I should do first is get the dress started. So, because rolling up Muddling Chocolate takes a bit of time and it's kind of boring to watch. I'll do it for the hair in a minute, but here's some I rolled out earlier using a pasta roller. And I'm just going to use my hands to warm that up. Come on, warm up nicely. Warm, warm, warm. And warming it up. Because Muddling Chocolate, or at least the one that I use, when it is cold, will crack when you try and bend it and move it around. So get that nice and warm. Then I'm just going to zing that down there a little bit more. Tap that and hope that does what it needs to. I'll just cut out a bit of a bodice. So just a bit of a V-neck bodice. Just because it's kind of an easy shape to work with. Don't want too much going on there. Don't want too much going on there. Then, so that's my dress upper kind of thing. Come on, too much fiddling with the camera. It's going to irritate people. Come on, focus on her creepy little face. Close enough. Anyway, then a little bit of water. Just brush that on. And quite weirdly, water sticks chocolate really well. So lots of that. And almost feel rude for not giving her undergarments, but anyway, we don't need to go that ridiculous. I have made a pirate lady once, and in order to get all the pieces on, I actually had to make most of the clothing, and that included putting more or less undergarments on the figurine as well. Kind of looked like an insane person going to that much detail. But it meant that all the clothing sat correctly and all the little bits were the correct thickness. Now, the biggest problem with the chocolate, as you can see here, because I'm trying to rush it for you, is that it does not stretch. So there will be little cracks forming. I'm just pressing that onto the figure. Press it on, keep folding it around. And turn her around and press that on. You can improve the elasticity of the Muddling Chocolate a little bit if you want it to be a little bit more flexible with a tiny, tiny little bit of fondant. So just pop that on there. Then I should have had a pair of scissors because it helps to cut these seams. And just run that along there. Good. Chopped, chopped. And squidge those seams together. Squidge those seams together. And this is where the water comes in. Tiny bit of water, and just run that down the back. And then you can smooth all of that completely smooth. And same on the front here. Just use a little bit of water to smooth it all into place so that it looks like an actual garment. And created quite a reserved garment here, but that's okay. Just trim some of that off. Here we go. Trim some of that off. fill in some of the gaps, and this is where the modelling chocolate really comes into its own. It's just that little bit easier to work with in terms of blending seams. So that's all good. Oh, and I've just gone a bit thin there, and you can see her chest is somewhat exposed, so I'll just correct that. But this is why it's good to have live, so you can see how to correct problems when they happen. Yep, just work that piece of material over. Work this piece of material over. And one thing a lot of people do wrong with figurines, it's not necessarily wrong, but when you're adding clothing to figurines, it really increases the size of the anatomy. So you tend to go for a much skinnier shape than you're aiming for. Although this is a ludicrously slender model, but you go for a much skinnier, more modest shape than you're aiming for, because when you start adding clothing to it, it bulks things out really quickly. I've done a couple of figure modelling classes where I've looked around and all my figurines are somewhat, not my figurines, my class's figurines are somewhat bustier than you'd expect them to be. You're like, really? Okay, let's go with a little bit more modest there. So I'm just warming up the next bit for the dress. And if I get that nice and warm, that will help. But you can see how, I know I've done a little bit of pre-preparation here, but that's just so that I can get it all done in 50 minutes. And nearly done. Come on, warm it up nice. Warm, warm, warm. So if I hurry up too much here, it will go a bit strange. It'll just crack. You can see it's starting to crack already. It's actually easier to do the model dress and clothes with freshly rolled out stuff that hasn't set, because this is set right through to the core of the chocolate. So I'm having to work quite hard to get a bit of heat into this so that it actually will flow like fabric. But if you freshly roll this out while it's still warm, you can assemble it on the figurine, and it looks really nice. But we'll make it work. So just lay that down with a little bit of corn flour under it. Where's my corn flour puff? Got stuff everywhere. It's not at all how I like working, but whoops. And water, fortunately, cloth. There we go. Nothing like a clean chucks cloth to make everything better. And just trim that down. Now I need to make the model sticky so that the chocolate will stick. And this is just water I'm painting on. The water does get repelled by the chocolate, but by the fat in the chocolate. But if you keep working it into the surface, it melts the sugar and it all settles in nicely. So come on, sort yourself out, love. Right, now I'm just going to try and give these a little bit of shape. Yep, a little bit of shape. It's fine, don't need to go too crazy. So I've just pleated it somewhat and pick that up and split the dress, that's all right, and slap it on and smudge it on, smudge it on. You can see there's a lot of love and attention given to this. But it works, for the sake of the demo, it works. There. And just slice the excess off the front there. Done. And a little bit of water. And if you're a bit quicker with this, it doesn't all crack. So like I said, if you do this while it's still warm and you spread it on, you get a much smoother, more natural looking fabric effect. I just need to get a wriggle on with this. Oh, I'll just cover up a bum area because it looks a bit wrong. It's more effort than I should go to for this, but just if I'm doing it, I might as well do it right. Here we go. So a little bit of water, and just cover up that mess. Done. And just blend that on. Oh, a little bit there. And just blend all that on with a bit of water. There. And then we've got a reasonable dress. You can give it a bit of interest, a bit of shape, and she'll look all right. So let's see, can I come back from that a bit? Why am I zoomed in so much? Come on, there we are. I'll throw that black out of the way because this is going to get very messy very quick. Dark colours are really rough to work with when you're doing this. Clean off some of my fingers as much as I can. Now I want to make sure that I get hair and makeup done before I hit the time. We've still got 5 minutes, so I'm just going to crank in there, and we're still good for time, yep. Just run across there. I'll wet that. And what I've got here is just a little strip of this over the arm, fold that around, and here we go. Done. Cut that. Oh, I'll do that over there so you can see it. Cut that. And same on this side. So a little bit of water across that, not too much. Fold that up and around. Just pinch the excess off. And excess off. Then I've got my 2 sleeves sorted. And take the excess water off myself. And then it really is just a case of slapping these on. So if I pop that in there like that, make her look like she's got some attitude and some pose to her. So put that one back, and I should really have fixed up the underarm there, but that's all right. We're in a hurry. And then this one we can put out, and you can see that the chocolate's already set, so it just holds its shape. And pop that on, blend all that in. I don't need to do any more to that, nope. Okay, now very quickly I'll do the makeup because I don't want to run out of time. I've still got 5 minutes, but it's getting close. So this thing here is amazing. It's just a mini blowtorch. If I pop that over her face quickly, it just melts all of the harsh lines out. Wish I could get one of these for my own face. It just calms everything down and neatens it all up. Let's see if I can get that to focus on there nicely. Then I'll do the dusting first. So pop that over there. Little tiny bit of pink, and I'm just going to pop that on the lips just to dry dust. I can do a little bit above the eyes. Oh, no, I've gone too far. That's all right, just take it off. And then a little bit on the cheeks. It just helps to bring out some of the features. Then let's get a little bit of an eyeliner going. So I'm just taking the excess off. And, oh, she's armless. I'll pop her arm back on in a sec. Should probably have done the arms before the eye. So here, there. And this is where I get too nervous and I overdo it. Done. But fortunately, I have the magic of cotton buds. Cotton buds are your friend with this. So what I'm using here is just an oil-based colour. You don't need to use an oil-based colour. I just like to because it's opaque and it works quite well. So I'm only going to put the colour on the top. Just try and create a little bit of shape. And I've already done more than I needed to with that. A little bit of an eyebrow just so that she's got some expression. Eyebrow, eyebrow, eyebrow. There we go. And same on this one, eyebrow, eyebrow, eyebrow. Oh, now she looks quizzical. Done. So they're not perfectly straight, but that'll do. And let's slap her arm back on. And get one arm back on. All good. So that's the bulk of the model done. Now all I've got to do is get some hair on her, and I've got 3 minutes to do it. So shoes you can work out on your own. You can either paint the feet, or you can just make them by wrapping them with a little bit of the chocolate. So just try and get your chocolate nice and warm to a point where you can roll it out. Warm, warm, warm. And then, come on, warm, keep it moving. While I'm warming that, I'll make the witch's hat. So, boink, cookie cutter, disc of chocolate. Little blob of that. And keep it all nice and warm. And now that should nearly be right. Now for the hat, roll that into a ball, roll it into a cone shape, pinch off the bit that you don't want. So ball, cone shape, press that down, blend the edges nicely into the hat. Pull the brim of the hat off because you've been too rough. Yeah, let's do that again. Yeah. There you go. Yep. Warm. Press. Smooth. And that is your little witch's hat. Just use a ball tool to get the shape there. Just watching the time quickly. Now this should be nearly the right texture for rolling out. And if I just crank that down there. Come on, where's my rolling pin? Lots of powder. And roll. And roll. I'm sure that's stressing out some OCD people. It's stressing me out. Roll. Actually, this whole table should be stressing out anyone who's a bit OCD. Or just anyone who likes to work cleanly, which I normally do, but when you're up against it time-wise, you can only do so much. So I pick this up and I turn it over each time just to help keep it from sticking. And there we go. And choppy choppy, here we go. Keep an eye on that, nearly done. And this is my hair. Done. Oh, hopefully you can see those. Yeah, you can see those. There we go. And just want to get the hair on, and then we're good. Then we're all good. So if you've got questions, please by all means ask them in the comment section of the video. And just keep those nice and warm. Hopefully I've got this. So shell tool. Shell tool is brilliant because it's the fastest way of getting a little bit of texture on. We don't have time for texture. Okay, got about 1.5 minutes left, and here we go. Quick, quick, quick. We don't have time for texture. All right, so warm that, just fold the edges under, and grab the back of the head. Oh, come on, where are you? And back of the head, bit of water, warm it up, warm, warm, warm. Give it a bit of shape and interest. I usually like to fold the ends under because it looks really jaggedy on such a small model. You don't want too much going on. So just bend that in there, then you get most of that covered. And then it's just another couple of strands and we are finished. The hat hides the most of it. So that around there. Done. Done, yep. And then another one. And if I fold that over while I do it, stop her from losing her arm. Done. Give her a bit of a interest at the front. And just before Paul and David cut me off, you can see how quickly you get the back of the head filled in. That's just 3 strands. And it's fine. It's not amazing, but it's fine. Dot of water on the top. This, give that some interest. And there we have our finished little witchy character. All done. The very final thing that you do is hit it with a blowtorch. This is my favorite bit, because again, this gets all of those little marks out and just makes it go all nice and shiny. Whoop, don't want to go too far. It does eventually melt, but if you hit it really quickly, you get that nice shine. You don't lose any of the detail, and that's all good. Very final thing that you need is the color for the center of the eyes, and I've lost that. You just do dots for the very center. Dot, dot, and add a highlight, and she's perfect. So that is all done. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, fabulous people. And of course, any questions, drop them in the questions at the end. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Paul and David, for having me. Thank you to the Cake Decorating Company, our main sponsor. And I will be on the chats and enjoy watching everybody else. Be sure to tune in for the rest of it. Bye.